Welcome back to another episode Pushing Back Cars with me, Paul Melon McFadden. Hope you guys are well. I trust that you're out there taking on life and trying to stack these good days into good weeks. And if the good weeks can be stacked, and you're on your way. How are you going, Mike?
Melon, good morning. It is 5:45 a.m. here on the East Coast, and things are good. Kicking off a new week, just running more training and doing that, which is great because it's supposed to be about a high of 39 today. So nobody likes being wet and cold, but here we are. But now
No, buddy.
everything's good, man. Just a really good week of, like you said, just being intentional and moving throughout the week, seeing the opportunities before me. That's, hey, there it is. I wasn't expecting it, but I'm prepared for it because I feel like every time we get on here to talk, we're just building the right muscles in all the right areas, physically, mentally, spiritually, and all those different things, man. And it's just been really, really good, full of gratitude, great conversations all the time, and really just great results. And glad to be part of it, man.
So good, mate. I had a, uh, I've had a great week again, just instructing these students. I can't tell you how, it's just like the people you surround yourself with, they just naturally sort of, I reckon you rise or fall to the level of the people that are around you in some ways. I mean, there are people out there who are either super strong positive or super strong negative who can maintain their own position, but just having great people around you, like it does shift what the days and weeks feel like. And so I've just been having this great ongoing position at work that I just love. And then my weekends with family, just we're getting ourselves established in this, little house we're living in Melbourne with a family there, and my daughter Annie's really pretty confident now with her run to and from school and public transport, and my son's in the middle of the rowing program there. It's a competitive sport. It's a lot of work. I think it's 7 or 8 sessions a week of on the water or in the gym on the rowing machines. Probably all seen them, and it's a proper test. He had a on Saturday. We dropped him down to the boat sheds at 7:30 a.m. and they had to pack the boats on the trailer and drive the trailer and bus about 2 hours north to a big lake where they've got the tracks are all on lakes now. They don't tend to race on rivers as much. And so we had like an 11:15 a.m. race, and then he had a second race at 17:40 with just like a lot of time in between. And we had to leave and go to actually a school function for him, like a parents' function. So we're there having dinner, and it's like 8 p.m. and we're watching on Find My iPhone. We're watching him come in the bus on the way back. And so we left this function at like 8:45 to pick him up at 9 p.m. after he'd been dropped there at 7:30 a.m.
Oof.
and took him home. And it's tough. It's a difficult sport, but that later race, that 17:40 race, he got his first ever win, his first W, got a gold medal around his neck.
All right, Michael.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I don't think he's ever had that dopamine hit or whatever it is associated with all that effort and pain. And so, it was good, really good to see, really pleasing. We had some just good family times then on Sunday. It was just a super chill weekend. Time with the dog, time with the kids, time husband and wife, Cherry and I just talking and, really living our lives and feeling like the toes are in the soil a bit, if you know what I mean, Mike.
Well, toes in the sand might mean differently for me than it does for you, Melon, but
Yeah,
not all good thoughts when it comes
right.
to my head. But yes, I know what you mean, and that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, Congratulations to Michael and team. And, as you heard in previous episodes, you hear the character that Michael has and what he's doing and realizes it's bigger than him. And it just paid off. So very proud of you, man. Great job.
So then they've got 2 more weeks until their final, which is called the Head of the River. Even though it's on a lake, but it's just a traditional name. And then it'll be into rugby season, and the academics continue and just, I don't know, man, just a really happy time. Have you ever seen that quote about the only two people in life you are responsible to ultimately? They're not your parents, they're not your kids, they're not your partner, they're not your teachers. They're you at 8 years of age and you again at 80 years of age.
Hmm.
It's like, what would the 8 year old you think if they saw you now? Or would they be like, wow, look at this human being is full of their dreams, it's my dreams? Would they be a bit disappointed? Are there things that you could improve on? And then the second thought is, what's the 80-year-old you think? They don't me. They know all your struggles. They know all your thoughts and reasons. And what would they be saying to you? Would they be would they be saying, savor the moment and enjoy yourself? And would they be telling you to go for the big, have a big swing at the big things? Anyway, these thoughts I've had recently, and I thought that was one of the best ones I've ever seen. Is the 8 year old you and the 80-year-old you? What would they think of you? What would they be telling you to do?
That's a
And
great
I think
topic
that's a
and good good reflection. And like, what are you holding yourself accountable? Like, is the 8-year-old self trying to be this at 80, and is the 80-year-old looking back being like, yeah, I was a good 8-year-old. But you know, if I'm being honest, mine's probably they're both gonna do the Spider-Man meme and point at each other and just be like, you never took care of your hair. You still don't have
oh.
hair. You messed it away. You had 72
I
years
reckon
to
that
fix
I
this.
reckon the 8-year-old Mike could be pretty happy. I reckon there'd be a bit of a jaw hanging open, looking at you getting around doing what you do.
Oh yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Besides that, yeah, it's stress related, I'm sure.
So did you have a I want to open the podcast today, Mike, but what we're going to be talking about, how we're building on the themes we've been working on a lot recently, which have been the identity, action, outcome, flow, intentionality, and abundance, gratitude, and then most recently a whole piece on integrity. So
Yes.
where are we sort of at today? What are we looking at?
Well, all these recent discussions that we've had, man, and we're very open and honest about it, right? We always share stories, personal stories, different things. And here's three to 4 weeks, 3 to 4 episodes that Melon and I were doing. And just this past week, it really came to a head where multiple times, multiple people, multiple engagements, multiple settings, uh, some drastically different. The idea came up about the truth and what is that? Why is that even important? And there were some questions that came up that were just very, some were intimidating. I'm not going to lie. And especially having these conversations with some younger guys that are, just out of high school and college, my men's group. And then another one was at work. And I'm discussing this with elite professionals and talking about the importance of truth and why we do some of the things that we do sometimes. And there was a few questions that came up that we're really going to go over today and a few topics, but this is really focusing on like why is the truth important? Where does it come
Mm,
from? How do we take the truth? Why do we avoid it? Right, is the big one. Sometimes we want to avoid the truth and we rather live in something or somewhere else because it's comfortable, right? It's comfortable. So I figured that would be a really good topic to jump in and discuss some main points to it, man, because it's something that we can apply every single day. There's just different versions of the truth, where we're getting it from, um, consequences, there's
mm,
rewards for telling the truth. But it really comes down to exactly what we've been talking about as far as being genuine, being authentic, people knowing that about you and seeing that about you and how important it is.
mm,
And when people see you one way or the other, it's, hey, you're either going to remain in that circle for a good reason or they're going to get rid of that. You're going out of that circle for a bad reason. And this is something that will help you maybe grade yourself as far as like, how do I take the truth? Do I search for it? When I do find it,
mm,
what do I do with it? Does it make change? Does it affect me? Does it go deep into my soul and affect how I treat others? It could be so many things and it's cloudy, but I think we got a good show ahead, Melon, and some really good points to touch on.
I love it. I saw a quote on this topic by a psychologist, Nathaniel Brandon, and it was the first step towards change is awareness, and the second step is acceptance. And so there's a lot of stuff in there about, how do you get past lies that you tell yourself? How do you get in contact with reality again? And there's a lot of people, I'm sure we all know people who are, you know, really living in a life with significant integrity issues, personal life, intimate life, people cheating on partners or, similar stuff at work. And it's
Hmm.
like these people are living without contact with reality, and they're hoping that it's not going to catch up to them, but it will. And I know in our two lives, like our professional lives, this is like absolutely at the very top, right? Like military aviation, the debrief culture, that every single mission has a debrief. The debriefs often are longer than the mission themselves.
Hmm.
And that attempt to extract the lessons needs like real sort of almost brutal honesty where there's no ego because this is all life and death stuff. And I'm sure it's very similar for you guys in the SF world.
Yes, it is. You have to be truthful because if you're not, you can miss key points where, at least in our communities, it'll kill you. Like that's the worst thing that could happen. Or no, I'm sorry, the second worst thing that happen. The worst thing that happens is one of your teammates
Yeah, that's
dies
right.
because you messed up or you weren't truthful
Yeah.
about something, right? So we always have a saying. It's just like, hey, everything that we're doing here is learned in blood. It's not
Mm.
just a good idea. It's been learned through tragedy or something terrible that's happened, and we have to be honest about that. But rolling it back from that pretty dark side, I get it. But I guess just to open up the discussion, Melon, is why do people avoid the truth? Like, why would Melon avoid the truth? Like, what's some of the first thoughts that come to your head?
I reckon there's an element of fear will come up. Like, what's it going to mean to me if I acknowledge this failing? There's if it's a positive truth, my wife loves me or I love my wife. This is not something you're hiding. Do you know what I mean? So these realities that we're hiding ourselves from, well, there's a barrier to accepting. Have got to have something to do with pain. I reckon, Mike.
Mm, I would agree. Um, why do I want to face the truth when I know probably that arrow is going to point back at me, that I did something wrong. I wasn't the good guy. I wasn't the hero. Uh, I made a mistake. I missed something that was key. Uh, or maybe hey, I was lazy and I didn't take the time to do something that I should have been. I don't want to face that. I don't want to be ridiculed. I don't want to be judged.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, I'll not go there.
Like a simple one for a pilot could be that you're just ignoring fatigue signs.
Like
Trying to
what?
push
What's an
through.
example?
Oh, like I remember doing a pardon me a mission in the Gulf, and it was it was a long time ago, so I don't think I'm breaking any rules by talking about this stuff, and it's pretty generic. But we were tasked, it was overhead Baghdad with in Iraqi national election underway, and it was a pretty high priority for the time, working through a whole area. We're doing uh, ISR over, and there was just there was just nobody out. There were like Bradleys on every corner, which is a military fighting vehicle, and Abrams sort of every couple of blocks, and there was just a lot of coalition hardware and personnel out, and the city was just not moving. And we got a call that ended up being a real direct support role for a company, a marine company that was south of Baghdad, and they'd been engaged overnight, first light, and it was a bit of a nightmare scenario where they'd sent out a clearing patrol that had then been ambushed, and then a platoon went out to recover them, and they got a further ambush, and it just got worse and worse. Anyway, they had a JTAC on board that called us up, and we ended up just going off. I was the aircraft captain, and I assessed that this was much more important than what was not happening in Baghdad because it was just absolutely locked down. And so we just went off and supported these guys, and we were continually recalculating our minimum fuels, and it was a pretty serious undertaking to be like, well, we're not going to make it back to the airfield we took off from, and then we're just working our way through possible landing. Airfield's getting closer and closer because we needed to stay with these guys because it's a long story, but the rescue was like a disaster. I had to get 15 clicks out on foot, and flatbed trucks only because High Command thought there was going to be an escalated ambush to take out helicopters. And so we stayed a long time. This is like the longest mission of my logbook, and we got to the, we're not on vapors, but we're right down at real minimum fuel to get out of that country to the closest airfield. And when we turned to go, we were all absolutely shagged. Like we weren't expected to do this. It was a long deployment, and then we picked up we picked up like 170 knot tailwind. There was this jet stream blowing us all the way home. We made it all the way back. We're just whizzing up our minimum fuels as we're going past Kuwait and each city as we're coming down. We go like, it was like, woohoo, we're gonna make it home. We got back, we'd sort of gone to the mess hall we had breakfast just before dinner, and we landed and we all went to the mess hall and had breakfast. It was like dinner after breakfast time and debrief while the imagery was getting downloaded and stuff. And there was a lot of questions to be asked. Anyway, on a mission like that, you could really imagine that people would push past a fatigue point, and you could be telling yourself that you're okay. And you could be ignoring the reality that your decision making, reaction time, judgment, etc., is going to get worse due to the fatigue. And so this is a like I can handle it, or I can get it done. This is a fear of a painful reality I was thinking of, Mike.
That's a wonderful example. And I remember you telling that story, and there's definitely a lot of truths in there that you guys had to face, and then you had to accept because what you believed in and like what you were doing is being like, hey, this is important. This is prioritization of a tasking that's means lives potentially.
But the
And you're
same thing can happen. The same thing can happen like just on a long drive. You know what I mean? You're telling yourself you're okay and you push on. There might not be the real high imperative of a situation like this where it's real life and death, people depending on you.
sure.
And you could really be BSing yourself about the effects of fatigue.
Well, no, and that's good. And I think that really flows into our next point is, there could be some cognitive dissonance when it comes
Right,
to this, right?
right.
And basically, like what you're looking at is depending on your background, what you are, if you're aviation, SF, I mean, it doesn't matter really, but you have a set of core beliefs and what you've viewed through a lens for most of your life or a big part of your life. And then something comes and really challenges it.
Mm,
And the instant thought process is like, no, that's not right. Because to me, that's wrong. Everything that I've been raised on, everything that I've believed, everything that I've been trained in, and whatever, well, that's wrong. But sometimes the truth is just the truth, and it's what happened. It's just like, hey, I picked up this rock and I threw it out there and it caused waves in the lake. And all your training is said like, no, 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 that's not possible. So it's like, but it clearly the rock fell into the lake and there's ripples now and you can see it, you can touch it, you can feel it, you can hear it. It's undeniable. That right there can cause like some distress. It can make you uncomfortable a little bit and just being like, how does this make sense? Because that's not what I was told. That's not what I was raised on. That's not my beliefs. That's not how I see this happening. That's not how I see the world. And that can cause a rift, in there.
mm.
And how do we deal with that? Do we go back to just well, it's not right, and I'm just going to live in that and be fine? Or are you going to ask more questions? Are you going to dig in and challenge yourself, saying, okay, well, this is what I believe on the left, but okay, I observed this, I heard this, I saw this, I felt this. How is this different? Okay, I need to get into this because there is some truth into this that I'm not always right, or my system maybe is not
Yeah,
always right,
yeah.
you know?
I mean, the aviation one with this could be, there's a near mishap, like a near crash, and then the pilot's not willing to look at himself and will be like, there's some external factor that caused that. It was the wind gust, it was the air traffic control, the weather was unexpected, and they're not taking on like, but thinking of themselves as being potentially flawed is too much of that cognitive dissonance. Like that new information is contradicting their previous belief that they're good. that they could make a mistake, and therefore all you're doing is trapping that mistake back in your future again. There's that, external locus of control. Like the problem is outside me, it's not inside me.
Mm.
And that first step of being able to just embrace the fact that you've made a mistake and there's an opportunity to learn, and that, but you've got to put your ego down. There's a lot of ego tied up in that cognitive dissonance piece.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's actually a really big thing to do with it, right? It's like I'm never wrong and all this happening in front of me, I'm always right. And
Yeah.
it's just that wall goes up immediately where it's like, no, 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 no. I'm right because whatever you want to tell yourself. And sometimes that's okay, man. And some people do that, but when you're trying to get into very specific things, especially in I'll say a larger environment where multiple people are involved, multiple cultures,
Mm,
multiple backgrounds, multiple ages, belief systems, like all kind of different things. That's when you really got to aim for the aim small, miss small. You got to get specific, and especially if you're trying to identify problems, there's no room. You got to leave all that at the door and come in. And like Melon's saying, both of our communities do this. It's sitting down and saying, okay, I know this is what we were built on, but this problem we've never seen before.
mm,
Who are we in this problem, and how do we get over this? How do we fix it? How do we identify with this? And that can lead to some really big conversations and a way forward for sure.
yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of people who are like fundamentally unwilling to challenge their own beliefs.
Yeah.
It should be that you've got your beliefs and they're well researched and they're loosely held. And if there's new information comes in, you're willing to update them.
Hmm.
But there's a lot of people who will persist, like even when the truth is obvious, and they're like digging their heels in even deeper. And it's like that person is stuck in a very special way. They're really avoiding the truth because it's all in that situation. There's an ego consequence.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, consequence. uh, what do you mean consequences? Is there a fear of having consequences? Like, are you going to get punished?
Oh, that's got to be a big part for sure. Like thinking, if I fess up here, that there's going to be a safety report written on me as a pilot. I might have an investigation. I might be found to have made the mistake. That's for sure. It's going to be a situation. I know it could be people, pilots, for example, not wanting to go see a doctor or a psychologist when you've got a concern that you might have an impact on your career. So I reckon there's a real thing about consequences and how things can happen, and what are other people going to say when they judge me. I
Hmm.
reckon that's a real one.
Yeah. I would say just in general, anything that I do that I find to not be, we'll just label it as not good. It immediately makes me think of, I mean, first my relationships with people. What are they going to think of me if they know that I did this or I said this or uh, I forgot this? Like it
Yeah,
we're all our hardest critic, and I'm going to give myself the biggest consequence internally, usually is what happens. But then also, it's always on my mind, and I'm sitting there going, man, I really messed this up. Man, I really hurt this relationship. I really hurt one of my teammates, and now I don't know if they trust me. Uh, and I go down that rabbit hole sometimes, and I'm sitting there thinking about like, okay, I'm like my fear of failure is pretty high because none of us want to fail, but in our communities, it's not the nice to have, it's the standard, and I've heard that many times. Is like, dude, you don't fail here because people die,
yeah,
so we are pretty hard on ourselves when it comes to that, and sometimes you'll see somebody, and this is an honest example. Sometimes at work, I'll see a guy cut a corner. And there's times they cut corners, let's be honest. It's fine
yeah,
sometimes. But other times you see it and then it leads to, a minor failure and everyone's getting on each other's ass about it, and then you saw the guy that didn't do the part and he's quiet, and you're just like, well, one, your integrity sucks, dude. And then you start chirping, and it's just like, dude, I
Mm,
know why that failed, and he's not saying anything. And then that's already damaging the the culture, the promise that you had, your relationship between each other. And that guy rather live in like denial of being like, no, 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 it wasn't me. I didn't do it.
yeah, that's right.
This wasn't all my fault, you know, and he's
Because
waiting for,
what we're talking about here is why people would not want to face the truth, right? These are all reasons why people would not want to face the truth inside this topic title about the lies we tell ourselves. And this is for sure a huge one, that there's a fear of a negative consequence. You know,
yep.
the person who's, a terrible example, someone having an affair and being like, if I told my wife, it'd destroy her, or this relationship's really over for me. I don't love them anymore, but that they'll fall apart if I break up with them, and what will impact me on the kids? And they're fearing consequences, and then they're not taking responsibility for the action you're into now. Like, people are not owning their role because of this. And I think that this is very common. I think everyone out there could identify with being afraid of the follow on from the lie you've been telling, or the truth you haven't been facing.
So, oh, I like that. So basically what you're saying is I'm going to visit the consequences. I'm going to go there mentally and I'm going to think about, oh man, this is going to destroy them. So I don't want that. So what's the alternative? Maybe I find comfort in living a lie,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
for
know?
sure. Yeah,
Uh,
that happens for sure.
I can create something a lot softer, a lot less painful, that isn't great, but it's not terrible. And I can just kind of live in there, you know, be stagnant, n not commit too much, but not overcommit. And you're just kind of living in limbo for the most part. And you're just trying to please everything. And man, I've been there before. But please believe me, in like relationships for me, that was really, really big, 5 years ago when I was dealing with a lot of stuff. And it was like, dude, I don't want to lose this. So I'm just gonna maybe tell myself some things to comfort
Yeah,
myself, but that's not the reality of what's going on, and I'm not prepared to deal with them at this moment. So I'm just
yeah,
gonna live
right.
it. I'm gonna live in it. I'm gonna be comfortable. And that worked for a little bit. Very badly it worked. And then it became too much and was like became like toxic to me inside. And it was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I just got exhausted from faking it in a way and living in comfort of what reality really was. And
Yeah.
it ended up working for the worst. So there's
So
there is,
is this sort of like living in a bubble, Mike, when there's uncertainty, and you don't want to face the uncertainty and deal with, like, maybe you're happy living in the grey rather than pushing it into a black and white, like it either is or isn't, and you're like, oh fuck, I don't want to bring that up. I don't want to.
yeah,
I don't
and
have to deal with how it really could be.
yeah, and then just realize, like when you try to find comfort in there, you're also not addressing the problem.
Yeah,
It like you see the problem, but you don't want to do the real work. You just kind of dance around it, and it's never going to go away. And you're going to know that. The other person or whoever you're working with or in a relationship with, they're going to know it, and you just refuse to see it. That's going to cause a gap because it's like, hey, we're trying to come together on this to find a way forward and through, and we're not matching up in the same space to get to there. And that could be a real issue, man. And comfort is not always peace, if I
yeah,
had to
yeah.
say, you know?
Could this be an example, Mike? Like, I know that, like, I've, people who are high performers can get into like a bit of an illusion state where they're like, I don't need to prepare, or the rules that everyone else to follow don't necessarily apply to me, and they get into that overconfident state.
Yeah.
And you and I would both know plenty of incidents that have come from experienced people who are like, I'm so good now, I don't need to do the basics. I don't have to do the mission prep. I don't have to plan the flight. I don't have to get right in the weeds with the weather and the fuel planning. Like I've done this 100 times. Is this an example of that where people can have that little bit of self delusion and they're not really engaging anymore and doing the stuff, doing the basics that you need to keep revisiting?
I think so. Absolutely, it can happen, and I've seen it. You've seen it. That illusion can be a story you tell yourself that makes sense, that brings you clarity and comfort, even though you're missing out key parts, and that can allow you to not have a really good preparation stage or training phase when you're approaching something like preparing yourself to have a conversation, preparing yourself for a mission. And that story or illusion that you choose to live in really could just set you up for ultimate failure. And I mean, it's, it's like, well, let me think here. I don't know. It's like underestimating what you're going against. You're going
Yeah,
10 people against 100 and you're just like, oh, we're going to be fine because we just have better weapons or
yeah, yeah,
we're more
yeah.
physically fit. So on principle, we're just going to be fine. We're going to win. You're about to get a rude awakening, man.
Yeah,
Because for us, we always say like the enemy has a vote too,
that's
and
right.
that can't be an illusion. That's a fact. You
And
know,
how many military campaigns have when you do the analysis, you're like they fundamentally underestimated the enemy.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. We've all cut bad a bad mission for sure.
Yeah.
So, other points in here. What about, we talked about you are the result of your environment before the five people you hang around, you're going to be the sixth. Um, what does, we'll say, social pressure
Oh,
and peer
peer
pressure,
pressure, man.
how does that play into the truth? And what do we tend to do? What would you say you tend to do, or what you've seen within that?
Like we're I would say that we're both in organizations and professions where there's really strong cohesion. So there's normally real alignment. There's a group norm, and it'd be really easy to come in and observe a workplace and like watch mission prep and briefing and execution and debriefing and be like, you get really clear on where is the norm in this squadron versus the other one, and like whether that norm is positive or negative, I feel like you're really likely to follow what your teammates do in my professions anyway, the workplaces that I've been in. And so if there's a group norm that's negative, I feel like it could be very difficult to not follow it along with that. I think it would take like some superb leadership to come in when there's a very strongly cohesive group and shift like that group from a negative norm to a positive norm. And we've had some terrible stuff in Australia where with some special forces and some investigations about bad behaviour, as an example. And there's also been military aviation units where, there's a fairly famous one where a US Navy jet hit a cable car in Italy, and a big investigation came, and they wanted to court martial the pilot. He'd flown down a valley, like a timed run. It was like a route top to bottom down this valley as fast as you could go
Yeah.
for time. And it turned out every single senior person in the chain of command had done that when they were a junior guy. It was like totally normal and super cohesive group. And then the group norm had shifted to a negative place, and that peer pressure and people going along and doing stuff that they probably, if you ask them in a cold light of day, they'd be like, oh yeah, that's a bad idea. But then here we are under an environment with peer pressure. You can find people doing negative stuff for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It sure does affect the way you think. And before you speak, you better think about what you say in this moment because people are listening, people are watching, and you could really send out some shock waves if you're not careful. That happened to me. After I got injured last year, Melon, I had a lot of questions, and just personally with some of my leadership. And one of the things we were talking about, which is very tough in my community, but it's an ugly truth, and it's about suicide. And we were given a brief, and it was like a PowerPoint thing. And I'm sure people in the service, you sit through these PowerPoints and it's very boring and it's not meaningful. There's no depth to it. And here I am. I felt like, what am I supposed to do with this? The night before, I had a experience with a Air Force veteran who was talking about self-harm, and he had a wife and five young children in his house. I never knew this dude. He just reached out to me through a mutual friend, and I was up for 7 hours trying to talk to this guy to get him help. The next
Mm,
day, we have this PowerPoint brief. And let me go back. A week prior, one of my friends took his own life um, at another command. So it's two people in a week, and I'm sitting there going, okay, the topic is special operations and suicide and self-harm, and we're talking about it on a boring PowerPoint. I said, as a leader and experience in this, where I've lost multiple friends to this, um, I'm going to be truthful. I'm going to tell the truth, and I'm going to be honest about why do we do this to ourselves? Why don't we help each other? Why don't we listen to each other? And I shared these stories, and all I said was, I hope in the moment that one of your best friends that calls you here, you stick around in these teams long enough, you're going to get a phone call. And I hope to God that you know who to call and who to be in that moment, and not just tell them to drink a beer, not tell them to go out and go chase women at the bar, but really know what to say and how to help him uh, not hurt himself. Because you ever been to a funeral where you're folding the flag and the parents are saying, why didn't my son get help? Why weren't his teammates there? Why couldn't he talk to you? Um, that's deep, man. And I've had that a few times, and I wanted to be that in the moment. Well, I thought that was the right thing to do. I thought it was a moment to be real as a leader, as an experienced guy within that stuff, and be honest with my guys, because that's the culture and community that I want to live in. Well, 3 days later, I got counseled over this, saying that I was being too cerebral about it and that I was bragging about saving someone's life. And that is not how I'm supposed to conduct myself. And it caused a rift between some of the leadership and myself. But till this day, it angered me. It used to anger me, but till this day, I stand by that truth because it's what happened. It's not about what I wanted to believe or find comfort, that I don't want to talk about it, or something terrible happened, or maybe I had to point a thumb at sometimes. Maybe I contributed in certain situations or others did. But that's the truth. This guy is gone. He's gone. That's the truth. And he felt like he couldn't talk to anybody. That's the truth. And who was I? Who are we as a community in that moment? Why didn't we see it? Why didn't we choose to see it? Why didn't we ask more questions? That's a tough one, man. And I definitely, for whatever reason, man, they just did not like that. Um, I remember being angry, like tears in my eyes, clenches or fist clenched. I was so angry, trying to just contain myself. I could not believe it. I could not believe it that we had that discussion and then I was getting hemmed up for it. That really sucks. So, anyways, social pressure and conformity, right? You're gonna get challenged by your environment, your culture, but for me, it's like, dude, I can't deny what just happened, and I need to say
yeah.
it. I need to say it because it's
Well,
one
this is
of
the
my
thing.
life.
This is the thing we're talking about. We're talking about pressures that people will feel, and all of us have felt, and all of us will feel all of these as a pressure to not um, see or experience the truth, and to go along with something we don't believe in. And clearly, we're all hoping to be moving towards the kind of people who have the level of integrity that you've just talked about there, Mike, where you are going to speak from the heart about a topic that you know and have lived, and that you're not going to, we're all hoping that we're going to be the people who won't stay quiet in that environment and just go along, and like rejecting that pressure, that social pressure to conform. It's very difficult to do it. And, we are hoping that we're encouraging people and developing people to be able to have that personal integrity and that personal leadership to be able to step up and speak up. when the time comes for you. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. We're highlighting these as the negatives that are just part of human nature, and we're all trying to aspire towards a character ethic here. And Mike has just displayed exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So hats off to you, man. Social pressure and conformity is a big one to break the pull of.
Yeah, and like getting into our next point is guilt and shame. So clearly that affected me because I'm talking about it, a year and a half later. But what guilt and shame when you're looking at stuff, you carry it with you, whether you want to or not. And usually it's within yourself and you're really beating yourself up looking into the past. But some truths just like they make you face the past. Like you
Yeah.
try to avoid it for so long, and there's always this like what goes around comes around, or if you don't think this is going to show up at your door one day and it's going to come at you when you least expect it, then you're wrong, and you can lie to yourself, but more than likely it's going to. And people just rather live under that blanket of comfort and pretend like, nope, that never happened. People call it karma. I don't know, but you live in that guilt and shame period for a long time. And you carry
Like
that
it
long
takes a
enough, it gets very, very heavy. And
like
then
it takes a lot to face. It
it
takes a lot to face a situation where you know you've done the wrong thing,
it
and
does.
that feeling of guilt often also like gets changed pretty quick. Like people don't often maintain guilt. They often it turns into like a resentment towards the person that they felt guilty about,
Yeah.
and it can just be a massive downward spiral, right?
Yeah, like what type of person are you or have you seen, Melon, that is filled with guilt and shame? Like what do they look like? What do they sound like?
Then I mean they're not talking up much. They're keeping it to themselves. They're they're burying stuff down.
Mm-hmm.
They're having a lot of difficulty moving forward in life. I think that there's a lot of people in this category that um, are trying to find answers with substances. Alcohol is often a crutch for people like this.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
difficult when you're carrying something bad that you know you've done, and you are not willing or able to face it and take responsibility for it. Then this is like one of the worst situations people can find themselves in. And if only they knew that you could get past this stuff by squaring your shoulders, stepping in and atoning and taking responsibility for that situation, the freedom that can come when you're not carrying this stuff anymore, it's a phenomenal thing.
Yeah. No, you
And
can't.
I'm only speaking as someone who has done this. I've gone and I've spoken to people. I've atoned. I've spoken with ex girlfriends and taken responsibilities for situations where I was really out of integrity, Mike. And there's there's a freedom when you have really taken responsibility and atoned for someone, and the depth of the atonement will vary for how bad the violation was. And you can for me to know that and I can tell you from truth, from personal experience, that there are loving, close relationships that can exist on the other side of that if you're
Oh yeah.
willing to do the work. And it's just it's a chalk and cheese from carrying something you're so guilty for.
Yeah, I like to look at this as, I won't say guilt or shame, but I don't belong. I don't deserve this.
Right, right.
And we had a conversation in my one group, I think it was like 2, 3 weeks ago. We talked about guilt and shame and just some really amazing points in there. But what it really came down to, especially for men, is I don't belong. I don't deserve love. I don't deserve your compassion. I don't deserve this because I've done something so bad or really wrong that I don't deserve any of this and I don't deserve it any more in my life. And that can make you stuck. And it's really, really hard to break. Um, Sometimes everything around you they beat you down, right? And especially in a elite environment like our communities, Melon. But you make a mistake, and they always say, "Hey, you got to have thick skin." And guys just ride you all day about it could be something stupid like having a dead man's gun. Like I forgot to rack my
Right.
rifle and it didn't have a round in and it went click. And you're like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
oh, and they just ride your ass all day But then the next day, they don't really talk about it. It's a new day, new fresh, and you go on. But in your head, you're going, man, I had a dead man's gun yesterday, and like I'm such a piece of work, and everyone's thinking about it. They're not saying it, and you just live in it. And it's really hard to get past that. But what I've learned most about guilt and shame is forgiveness and grace.
Mm, man.
Not just for others, but for yourself, especially. And really just giving yourself the grace of like, man, I'm human and I am fully capable of mistakes and not being perfect. And I never will be perfect. That's great. And then like forgive yourself. Just be like, man, don't beat yourself up too hard. It was a tough one. Yes, you took it. Yes, you paid for it. Yes, you admitted to it. Yes, there's nothing else you can do. Just go back to what you're doing and be a good dude. Like that's all you can do and forgive yourself and move on. Stop talking about it. Don't
Right.
think about it too much. Admit to it. Everyone knows. And then they will see you and they're already going to know like, dude, this guy took accountability. He already said what we were all thinking. So he's aware. He knows what
Yeah.
he did wrong. Get off of his ass. And how about you focus on what you're doing and not spend all your time beating him up, and it's just that's my culture at least. That's how we treat each other. We hold each other a standard, but you want to see the guy react to failure. That's ultimately what our community is about. It's not about being perfect. It's how do you work through adversity? And part of that is letting go of guilt and shame when things aren't perfect.
Yeah. The debrief, you know, the debrief is there for a reason. And part of it is to take the emotional impact from the errors away, that it's not a moral judgment. You're not saying you're a terrible human being. For us, it's like the aircraft was in this position and it shouldn't have been there. It was at the wrong height. It was the wrong speed. It was doing tracking the wrong direction or whatever the situation is, rather than you, the pilot, were terrible. You know what I mean? You're making it a situation where there's wrongness and you can't get past it. Like, so this is some of the benefits of having these debriefs that we do, where it does like de-emotionalize it. It just gets it back to just being clear. This was done. This should have been like this. This is how we can progress you. And this is the kind of stuff that Mike and I mentor and coach all the time. How to get past these breakdowns, which we're all going to engage in.
Yeah. Yeah, we see it almost every day, both as instructors and also, man, we see it in our personal lives too. Like I'm like this with my girlfriend. Well, something happens and I'm like, hey, let's sit down, let's make a space, let's debrief, let's talk about this. What did you see? What did I see? And and again, point the thumb before you point the finger, and that's my part in there because I don't want to feel that shame or guilt as much as possible anymore. I carried around a lot of that for a long time and thought I could deal with it because I was a big tough guy, and that was a load of shit. And I choose not to do that anymore. But I say that too. I say it in past tense, but I've grown a lot. And I know you have too, Melon. And something
Mm.
means a lot to me is, we've been doing this for almost 5 years. And Melon, before we recorded, just what was that last night? He was just saying like, just to see how you've grown, Mike, for the past 5 years is really impressive and really proud of you, and which I really love and appreciate. But what I'm getting at here is like the emotional side of things, the emotional maturity or immaturity. And being honest, I'm looking back maybe 5 years ago, my EI was not as high as I wanted it to be, and it's nowhere near where I am now. Um, a lot
Yeah.
of avoiding truth held me back from gaining that EI level, and
Right.
I paid for it. I lost great relationship over it. Um, And I own that, but my emotional maturity was not where it should have been, nor did I understand how to go about it. And one of those things is there's like a defensive wall or mechanism that comes up, and I didn't have any desire or resilience or capability. Like I wasn't confident in myself that I could face it
Right.
because it was so big and nasty and heavy. and ugly. And but I can't avoid the hard truths anymore. I need the truth to grow. It gives me purpose and direction. It lets me know where I failed. It lets me know my weakness. It allows me, like, that's a blessing to me. And I've said this before, but it's truly a blessing to have the ability to learn where I am wrong, where I can and where I can improve. Imagine if I didn't. And I didn't for a while. And
Yeah.
and I was stagnant, dude, and I was miserable and I was just like, man, why is the world suck and I'm always right? You know, like it's like Kim Jong-il,
Yeah.
Team America. He's like, why isn't anybody more intelligent like me? You know, and it was that lifestyle, man. But it sucked. It was terrible and it was bad. Um, but definitely as you grow and looking at emotional maturity or immaturity, that's going to play into a lot of this too, as far as where the truth lies.
Yeah. 100%. Do you want to recap some of these, Mike? These key um, reasons why people avoid hard truths?
Yeah, yeah. So where we're at so far, we still have like one or two to go that we came, but fear of painful reality. Hey, maybe you're the bad guy or girl in this story,
Yeah.
and nobody wants to tell that story, right? I don't want to be the bad person or the reason why everything didn't work out or failed or I hurt somebody or something bad happened to somebody. So there's that one. Cognitive dissonance. What you believe is going to collide with what happened. And you have to put that part aside to really, if you really want to get to the absolute truth and factual thing of like, there's zero denying it. It happened right in front of me. Um, Fear of consequences, right? Hey, if I admit to this, if this happens, or I own this, then A, B, and C could happen. Doesn't say they're going to, but you fear it. Like if I tell my partner I just spent all of our life savings, they're going to leave me because I'm irresponsible. Like, yeah, that's probably going to happen, maybe. But you're going down and you're going to live in that fear. Comfort illusion. We like to tell our story where we're not the bad person
Mm,
and we tell a story that fits the narrative. And it's funny how the brain works because it will always try to put A, B, C, and D together in whatever makes sense. And it's not always the truth, but it's what makes sense. And we find comfort in that. Comfort in the illusion that, no, I'm not the bad person here. That's not what happened. Social pressure and conformity.
oh yeah. Peer pressure.
Yep, peer pressure, environment, culture, team, whatever you're in, family dynamic. Um, yeah, I can't say that because my family or my teammates are going to ride my ass. So don't even bring
What
that.
hap- what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. How
Yeah,
bad do people behave sometimes
absolutely.
as a group?
Absolutely. And we just covered guilt and shame. So yeah, if I admit to that or I got to carry it, man, then I don't deserve to be here. I made a mistake. I made an unhealthy choice. I don't deserve love. I don't deserve a relationship. I don't deserve work. I don't deserve trust. I don't deserve anything because I'm broken and I'm a POS. And then we last part we just covered was emotional immaturity. And I don't relate that
Right.
to age. I relate that to the work that you choose to do to grow.
Yes.
I know 50-year-old men who have no emotional maturity. They don't know how to speak about those things because they've just blocked it their entire life. They were taught it or they find comfort in it. And so it's not an age thing. It's the amount of work that a person have put into himself to have the EI, emotional intelligence, to be able to process and find truth in things. So just a quick recap, and I think we have
Yeah,
like
yeah.
two or three
And so
more.
and so these are all reasons, you know, stories that people tell themselves rather than facing that truth, Mike. And is there a cost associated with all of this? Like where does this go? Like what is can't we just keep telling ourselves these stories and living in the illusion?
No, I mean you can, but don't ever expect to arrive where you were intended to. Um, you can tell a story whatever you want, It's probably going to lose you friends. It's probably going to lose respect for you, trust for you. I mean, think about it in a setting where you have somebody, or maybe even yourself, where you just refuse to admit to something, but everybody saw it, everybody heard it, everybody felt it, and you will just not admit it. They're not going to want to associate with you. Like they just don't want to be around you because you're distorting reality, you're distorting the truth. And really, I think just in the culture in the West right now, we have the politicians are doing a great job at that and dividing and just
Yeah.
causing really big gaps of like, well, if you're not this, this, and this, well, then we don't want to be around you. And there's no discussion, there's no understanding, there's no anything. It's take this narrative and run with it. And then the result is you cannot be part of this. When it's just like, actually, we should be aiming to be part of this because we all live in the West. We all live in the United States. We all live in Australia. We all live in the same place. This is our home. And we're actually all in this together instead of conforming to the narrative of, hey, you're either this or you're not. It's like, no, no, no,
Right.
no. That meaning is bullshit. You know?
So there's costs associated with living in denial, right? Like these carrying this stuff and the small lies that you tell yourself and accept, they almost always lead to bigger ones down the track. And sometimes just, trying to remember all of this complicated BS you've been telling, who was I saying, what's version of the story to who, and this stuff leads to a performance decline. It's inevitable. Pardon me. And that false foundation you have, eventually reality is going to come through it. And it's like nearly every air crash investigation that I've studied, and I know people can see these TV shows, you can see there's this chain of events with little breakdowns. And ignoring a truth and stepping over it, someone doing a procedure the wrong way, or that group norm that's deviated from, the corner that gets cut becomes the new normal procedure, and then that corner even gets cut more, and people don't even know what the real procedure was anymore.
Yep.
Ignoring truth in the beginning, it can escalate, and literally in what we do, there's deaths that can result of it,
Mm.
and not just loss of trust, loss of faith in a leader in a position because of small lies, but it's just this aviation accident history is littered with accidents and losses of life where there has been a denial of truth and a failure to face a small problem that has escalated and it's gone too far.
Hmm. So there's multiple ways I've seen come from that, like there's investigations, especially when we have something terrible happen. But there's usually some kind of narrative that comes up of what are we trying to look at here? What's the truth of what happened? Um, and sometimes the person that's done it or the culture or whatever, maybe the team, the command, the company, they want to sell a narrative of like what's going on, right? To fit a certain agenda. And we can talk about manipulation and control of how sometimes people or organizations can contort the truth to fit
Yeah,
something that they want it to come off as. Like, it's not 100% what happens, but we're going to take 80% of it because that part sounds really, really good for what we're trying to prove and who we're trying to be. And we're going to really hammer that home to everybody. So it makes us look like X. Makes us look really good. Makes it look like it was a one-off. Makes it look like we're still in charge, like we're still powerful, like we're still a good person. You could go down the thing there. But lies can ultimately be a tool for self-serving agendas. And
mm,
can we do that? Have we done that? Yeah, I've done that in my life. I'm not gonna lie. We
yeah,
all have. Is it the right thing to do? Mm, maybe in certain times in high tense situations where it's a way forward. Otherwise, there's not going to be anything. I'm sure we could f discuss some examples, but in general, I don't think it's good.
No, I mean, there's a compounding cost, and we're talking about in our professional lives that there can be fatalities, and we can talk there about it's not the truth that hurts you; it's the truth you refuse to see.
Yeah.
That's the one. That's the one that sneaks up behind you, right? And um, trying to deny it at a certain point, the reality is going to break through. But also, this stuff happens in our personal lives. The little lies in a relationship that impact the feeling of love and trust and attachment between a couple. Maybe people can't put their finger on exactly what's wrong with a relationship, but they're getting a sense something has changed. And there's a lot of relationships out there that are drifting along, and there's just a bed of small lies, small breakdown in integrity that is costing these people something that they could have that's amazing if they were just willing to address the issue, right? So living in denial and not addressing the integrity is not just life and death stuff in a professional setting. It can also just sap the love and the connection and the joy out of our personal relationships as well, Mike.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I had a relationship where I felt like I was pouring 100% in, and then I would get maybe 20% back, and then just get questioned the whole time about my motive, about why are you putting all this effort? You're too good to be true, and all these things. And ultimately, it didn't work out because there was no trust, there was no there, and I felt a lot of manipulation and control. Like I really did, and it was unhealthy, and I didn't feel a lot of good things. So I chose to step away, as much as it sucked, but that's how I felt and what I was receiving, man. And it could be really hard to do that. And you got to go back and say, who was I in that moment? Was I truthful?
Yes.
Was I genuine? Was
Yeah.
I consistent? Did I show up? Did I
How
say,
did I contribute to this?
yeah, how did I contribute, right? And you do that. And I owned up to it. I communicated all of that. I asked you about it actually multiple times, and other people that hold me accountable and trustworthy, and to get to there wasn't always comfortable. And I got very little back from them. And that told me a lot of like, they don't even want to step into this arena to talk about it. So if they're not willing to grow or take accountability, then I need to go away because it's not going to turn out well.
Yeah. But it's like all of us have had these experiences where there's been lies and a unwillingness or inability to look at the lies. And I think we can all imagine or remember ourselves the cost of what it's like when that is the case, and you're not staring that issue in the face and addressing it, and it's just persisting, and you're taking it. It should be in the past, it should be resolved, and you're putting it in the future, and it's just going to stay inside that relationship. It's going to stay inside that professional team until it's addressed or until there's an explosion. So these things are ticking time bombs when you don't deal with them.
Yeah.
So, Mike,
Um,
what do we do? What's the way out?
the way out.
Like we've talked about how bad this stuff can be, why we would all want to do it, and then what the cost is. But like, when do we get into the set us free part?
Oh man. You're talking about the good stuff, the good feelings, the other side.
Yeah,
Uh, Literally probably taking account of everything that we just covered and asking yourself these questions and where you stand with this, and are you doing the things to actually find the truth? And I think if you can say yes, the part that's good is that you can look back and say, I was scared. I was worried.
mm,
Had all these genuine concerns, but I did it. I stood up. I was truthful, authentic, genuine. I wasn't hiding. So I wasn't living in fear, but I actually had courage to say the right thing. I did it because I care for the right things. I do it because of the person I'm with. I did it because I love my teammates. I did it because I believe in the mission. I did it because I've been entrusted by something or someone to do the right thing that I swore I said I would. And I showed up and I did the work. I asked myself the hard questions. I admitted the hard answers. And
Yeah.
man, if that doesn't make you feel good about yourself, take away other people and other things, but it's just like I know I stood up and I said the right thing, even in the most uncomfortable environment. I feel pretty damn good about myself, man. I'm proud of myself, you know, and that alone is a good feeling, because other than that, I can't really, I can't really take anything away from it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Such a great point, Mike. So the last part here, the last piece is how to break free, how to own the truth. So how to stare at this difficult thing and regain your integrity. And so they're a framework, three steps, three pillars of radical ownership. So in my opening quote from Nathaniel Brandon, it was the first step towards change is awareness, and the second is acceptance. So funny old thing, awareness is step one and acceptance is step two. So in awareness, you want to identify the facts that are inarguable and ignore the story. So there can be that temptation. I know there's times when struggling through a flying course where things are difficult and you're assessed on every mission, and you can be like, it wasn't me. I was unlucky. These things were beyond my control. Blah blah blah. So in that point, you want to be like, where can I take responsibility? So self awareness is a key to leadership.
Mm.
So starting there, step one, awareness. Step two, acceptance. So then see this truth without judgment. Don't look at it and put in this morality wrongness step. So just observe without reaction. So for pilots in the debrief, there's you asked, and we always ask the students, the trainees, what went well, what do you need to improve on, and we want to see this objectivity about how did the mission go and how can we improve it, right? What would someone who looked at the tapes say about what happened? So remember, there's respect given to people who admit mistakes. So there's accepting what actually happened after you become aware of it. And then the third one, unsurprisingly, is action. So there's three A's. It's awareness, acceptance, and action. This is where you're going to do something about it. So this is the debrief. So we've gone, flown the mission, we've debriefed it. You're now going to go and adjust, and then we execute. So this is the flying loop. This is what we do. Like Stephen R. Covey says, you begin with the end in mind. So now you're taking the steps towards a better outcome. So remember the three steps, a bit of hard truth process, say it out loud, get it into the open, write down the cost of ignoring it, and then take action before you talk yourself out of it. And that's where you can use an accountability holder, a mate like Mike or my wife, Cherry. Let them know what you're going to do and then get into action. So this is the regaining your freedom, Mike, owning the truth, awareness, acceptance, and action.
Love it. This is a really good one, man. I feel like we were just full of examples and stories because this is very relevant and really I hope to the listeners, I hope this is relevant to you too and has really made you think about a lot of situations in your life where you either, accepted the truth or avoided it. And I know everybody has. But if I could just I know we're right about time, so if I could just leave my final little challenge and kind of wrap up. Um, the point of it, avoiding the truth doesn't make it disappear. Call it a skeleton in your closet or sweep it under the rug. Someone's going to trip over it or someone's going to open the wrong door at some point at the wrong time, and you're not going to be prepared for it. And you're going to fear that moment until it happens. And you're going to be robbed of so much purpose and joy and happiness and all kind of really, really good things that are waiting for you. It's going to really keep you trapped. But really, that's no way to live. That's not real life in the sense of like energy, right? That it's like slowly dying or something like that. And that's not how we were
Yeah.
meant to live or be. Um, but we're supposed to have meaningful connection, which means the truth. and even when it's uncomfortable. But it's if you do it out of caring and love for that instead of self-serving agendas or selfishness or something like that, just I challenge you, just question yourself and be like, who do you really want to be for this person? Who do you really want to be for your teammates or company or environments or friends or whatever it is? And really just take a few minutes to ask yourself and go down there and go through some of these examples, ask yourself the same questions. Are you doing some of these? How can you counter it? How can you show up as genuine and be authentic and be a good person? Because it's possible for everybody. Give
Mm,
yourself some grace and forgiveness. You did the best you could in the situation. You did with what you knew. Maybe you didn't have all the information and you made a decision that you thought was right at the time, but later it wasn't. Things happen, but you always have the ability and choice to show up with
yes,
grace, forgiveness, be authentic, be genuine, and just do the right thing.
love it. I reckon all of us, here's my challenge. A tactical step is to just go through that last little bit, identify a truth you've avoided, examine the cost that has come from ignoring it, and take one action today toward confronting it.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Good episode, Melon. Now we you and I got to sit down and go over some things,
We
like
do.
more growing to be had, I guess.
That's right. So remember, guys, leaders don't fear the truth, they embrace it. If this episode has resonated with you, please let us know where. Let us know where you've seen this in personal life, in action, in professional settings. Let us know how you've dealt with it. Let us know insights you've had. We respond to all messages. You can get us at pushingbackchaos at gmail.com. And we're on the Insta. The links are on the show notes. Please share your insights. Reviews really help the algorithm, and we welcome 5-star ones. And honestly, if you guys are interested in this kind of content, this is the stuff that Mike and I have a lot of professional experience in teaching. And so we are looking to move forward into a mentoring and consulting space. So reach out if that's of interest to you. You got any final thoughts there, Mike?
No, man, if I'm being truthful, I really do got to get my hair situation under control. I'm losing. I really don't know what to do with it anymore. It's too much on the sides, not enough up top. And I if I'm telling the truth, I've sat on it for too long, and I'll just never be Paul McFadden and the pilot, Top Gun,
uh,
master of the universe. It just ain't gonna happen for me. So I have to accept that. That's the honest truth. That's my reality. It's not my belief, and I have to find a way to live with myself.
love it. Well, on that final note out there, guys, take care and have a great week, and we'll see you next time.